The lake at Raven Shallow was frozen thick that winter, and the sound of skates on ice carried far across the empty fields. Nora Whitfield could hear the children laughing before she saw them. She stood at the kitchen window of the small stone cottage where she lived with her aunt, a chipped teacup warm between her palms. The steam curled up and touched her chin, and outside the sky was the color of old pewter. She lifted the cup and took a small sip. The tea was bitter because they could not afford good leaves anymore, but the warmth was kind. She had woken that morning before the sun, as she always did. She had swept the hearth, laid the fire, kneaded the bread, and set the pot on to boil. Her hands were red from the cold water in the basin. Her hair, which was the color of dark honey, was tucked under a plain white cap. She was 23 years old, and most of the village had already decided she would never marry. She had decided the same thing herself, and she had made peace with it, or so she told herself when the nights were long. Her aunt, a small woman with a bent back and a soft voice, sat by the hearth with a piece of mending in her lap. The needle moved slow. Her eyes were not what they had been. "The children are on the ice again," Nora said, watching them through the frosted glass. "They should not be," her aunt said. "The ice is thinner near the middle. I heard it groan yesterday when I passed by." Nora frowned. She set the teacup down on the wooden sill. Outside, the little figures on the lake were bright against the white. 3 of them, she counted. 2 girls and a boy. They wore red scarves that flew behind them like ribbons. She could hear their voices, high and thin, calling to each other across the ice. "They are the Ashcombe children," her aunt said without looking up. "Their mother is dead a year now. Their father drinks." Nora knew this. Everyone knew. The village was small and its sorrows were shared. She pulled her wool shawl tighter around her shoulders and went to the door. The latch was cold under her fingers. She stepped outside into the yard, and the air met her like a wall. Her breath came out in small white clouds. The snow crunched under her boots, a dry, sharp sound. The wind smelled of pine smoke from the chimneys of the village and something else underneath it, the clean iron smell of deep cold. She walked to the low stone wall at the edge of the yard and looked out across the field to the lake. The children were still there, 3 small red flags on a white page. She watched them for a moment. She did not know why her heart began to beat harder. Behind her, the sound of a horse. She turned. A rider was coming down the lane. His mount was tall and black, and the horse moved with the slow, patient step of a well-schooled animal. The rider sat straight in the saddle. His coat was dark green wool, and his gloves were black leather. He did not look at her. He was looking at the lake. She knew who he was. Everyone in the village knew. He had come to the great house on the hill 3 weeks ago, and no one had seen him up close since. He was the Duke of Raven Shallow, and he owned the land beneath her feet and the lake beyond and the trees around it. His name was Alistair Crane. He had been a soldier once. He was said to be a hard man, and a silent one, and no one had ever heard him laugh. She stepped back from the wall. She did not want him to see her. But he was not looking at her. He had stopped his horse in the middle of the lane, and his gaze was fixed on the lake, and his brow was drawn. Then she heard it. A crack. Long, low, terrible. It rolled across the field like the sound of a whip drawn slow through the air. She felt it in her chest before she understood it. The children on the ice stopped moving. One of the girls dropped to her knees. The boy called out. His voice was thin and afraid. Nora did not think. She ran. She did not stop for her cloak. She did not stop for her boots to be tied tighter. She ran across the yard and past the wall and through the field of dry, dead grass that stood up out of the snow like bones. The snow was deep. Her skirts dragged. Her breath tore at her throat. She heard herself say the children's names, though she did not know she was saying them. Behind her, the sound of hooves. The Duke had turned his horse and was coming too. But she did not look back. She could not. The lake was ahead, and the children were on it, and the ice was breaking. She reached the shore. The reeds were frozen stiff and they broke against her legs as she pushed through them. She stepped onto the ice. It creaked under her, but it held. She moved fast. She did not slide. She walked with small steps, spreading her weight. The way her father had taught her when she was small. Her father was 10 years dead now, but his voice was in her ear. Slow, she said aloud, to no one. Slow and light. The boy was closest. He was on his belly on the ice, his arms spread. His face was white and his mouth was open. The two girls were farther out. The smaller one was crying. The bigger one, perhaps 10 years old, was on her knees, holding the smaller one's hand. "Do not stand up," Nora said. Her voice was steady. She did not know how it was steady. "Do not stand up, any of you. Lie flat. Spread your arms." The boy did as she said. The bigger girl did as she said. The smaller girl kept crying. Nora slid down onto her own belly and began to crawl. The ice was cold through her dress. It bit through the wool. It bit through her stockings. It burned her hands. She could smell the ice, a strange sharp smell like cut stone. She could hear the water moving underneath, dark and slow, and every few seconds another crack, small and dry, as the ice remembered it was breaking. "I am coming," she said. "I am coming to you. Do not move." She reached the boy first. He was maybe 7 years old. His eyes were huge. She did not stop for him. "Crawl backward," she told him. "Do not stand. Crawl toward the shore. Do you hear me?" He nodded. His lip trembled. He began to crawl. She kept going. The girls were farther. The ice under her was thinner now. She could see it. It was grey instead of white, and in some places it was almost clear, and she could see the black water beneath. Her heart was very loud in her ears. Behind her, she heard the Duke's voice. He was on the shore now. He was calling something. She could not make out the words. She did not stop. She reached the older girl. The girl was shaking. Her lips were blue. "Give me the small one," Nora said. "Slowly, do not stand." The girl passed her sister's hand into Nora's. The small one was maybe 4 years old. She was so light. Her small mittened hand fit inside Nora's like a bird inside a nest. "Now crawl back," Nora told the older girl. "The same way I came. Slow, flat. Follow the boy." The older girl nodded. She began to move. Nora turned herself carefully on the ice, holding the small girl against her chest. The child's face was wet with tears. Her nose was running. She smelled of milk and wool and cold. "Shh," Nora whispered. "Shh, my little one. We are going to be all right. We are going home." The child put her face into Nora's neck. Nora began to crawl. The ice groaned beneath her. She could feel it flex under her hip. She stopped. She held her breath. She did not move. Somewhere far away, the older girl was calling out. Somewhere far away, the boy was almost at the shore. Somewhere far away, the Duke was shouting. But right here, in this small circle of grey ice, there was only the sound of her own heart and the water moving under her body. The ice cracked. It did not break all at once. It gave, slow, like a piece of thin cloth pulled apart. Nora felt the cold seize her from the waist down. She kept the child high, above her chest, held tight to her shoulder. The water was so cold it did not feel like water. It felt like knives. It felt like fire. She gasped and could not gasp. She held the child up. "Take her," she said. But there was no one to take her. The child was crying now, high and thin. Nora kicked with her legs. Her boots were heavy. Her skirts pulled her down. She reached with one hand and caught the edge of the ice. It broke off in her fingers. She reached again. She caught a firmer piece. She held on. "Hold on to me," she said to the child, though the child was already holding. "Hold on and do not let go, my darling. Do not let go." The cold was in her chest now. Her breath was going away. She could not feel her legs, but her one hand was on the ice, and her other arm was around the child, and she was still holding. Then something happened. A dark shape came across the ice. Fast, low, she heard the scrape of boots. She heard a man's voice, close, very close, saying words she could not make out. A gloved hand closed around her wrist. Another arm came around the child. "Hold to me," the voice said. Hold to me. I have you." She looked up. The Duke of Ravenshollow was on his belly on the ice, one arm hooked around the small girl, the other locked around Nora's wrist. His face was very close. His eyes, which she had never seen before, were grey. Not the pretty grey of doves. The hard grey of iron in rain. His jaw was tight. There was ice in his eyebrows. "Do not let go," he said again. "The child first," she said. Her teeth were chattering so hard she could barely form the words. "Take the child first. I will take you both," he said. "Do not argue with me." He pulled. He was strong. She had not known a man could be so strong. He lifted the child clear of the water in one motion and set her on the ice beside them. The child lay flat and did not move. She was too cold to cry now. Then he took Nora with both hands. He pulled her up onto the ice, inch by inch. The ice cracked again beneath them. He did not stop. Water poured from her skirts. Her hair had come loose from its cap and fell wet against her face. "Crawl," he said. "Crawl with me. Do not stand." She crawled. She did not know how. Her body was not hers. But she crawled beside him, and he had the child under one arm now, held to his chest, and with the other hand he was pulling Nora, guiding her, keeping her moving. The shore came closer. The reeds, the dead grass, the bank. They reached solid ground. She could not stand. He set the child down in the grass, and then he lifted Nora as if she weighed nothing at all. She could feel the wet wool of his coat against her cheek. He smelled of leather and wet wool, and horse, and something else she could not name. Something clean and warm, like bread in an oven. She heard the boy crying. She heard the older girl saying something over and over. She heard her aunt's voice, thin with distance, calling her name. "Take the little one," she whispered against his coat. "Please, she is cold. She is safe," he said. His voice was rough. "They are all safe." "Look," she lifted her head. The boy was up. The older girl was up. They were both stumbling toward her aunt, who had come running through the field, a heavy blanket dragging behind her. The little girl in the grass was already being wrapped in a cloak the Duke must have dropped from his shoulders when he ran. Nora saw all this, and then the world tilted, and she saw nothing at all. She woke in a bed she did not know. The sheets smelled of lavender. Real lavender, not the poor, sad little sprigs her aunt hung in the linen chest at home. A fire was burning close by. She could hear the crackle. She could feel the warmth on her cheek. Her hair was dry and someone had brushed it. She was wearing a nightdress made of linen so soft it felt like water. She turned her head. The room was large. The walls were pale green. A tall window let in grey afternoon light. There was a chair by the fire, and in the chair sat a woman in a black dress with a white cap. The woman was knitting. She looked up when Nora moved. "You are awake," the woman said. Her voice was quiet and kind. She had a broad, round face and grey hair pulled tight under her cap. "Praise be. I am Mrs. Ashby. I keep the house here. Where Ravenshollow, His Grace brought you himself. Do not try to sit up yet. You have been very cold and very ill." Nora looked at the ceiling. The plaster was carved into a pattern of leaves. She had never seen anything so beautiful. "How long?" 2 days. 2. She tried to lift her head. Her body would not answer her. "The children. Are they all well?" "Every one of them. The little one had a fever the first night, but she has broken it. She has been asking for you." Nora closed her eyes. Tears came, and she was too tired to stop them. They ran down the sides of her face and into her hair. "Thank God. His Grace has sent for the doctor twice a day," Mrs. Ashby said. "He would not have any other, and he has been in and out of this room himself, though I told him it was not proper." Nora opened her eyes. Mrs. Ashby smiled a small, careful smile. "He does not do things because they are proper. He does things because he decides they are right. You will learn that." "I do not think I will be here long enough to learn anything of His Grace," Nora said. Mrs. Ashby said nothing. She only kept knitting. The needles clicked together softly. Outside, a bird called once, twice, and was quiet. The door opened without a knock. He came in the way he had come across the ice. Fast, low, purposeful. He was wearing a plain dark coat and no cravat, which shocked her. His hair, which was the color of wet wheat, was pushed back from his forehead as if he had been dragging his fingers through it. He stopped at the foot of the bed. His iron-grey eyes went to her face. "You are awake," he said. "Your Grace. Do not." He held up one hand. "Do not use it with me. Not after what you did. My name is Alistair." Nora did not know what to say to that. She looked at Mrs. Ashby. Mrs. Ashby was gathering her knitting into a basket. She stood and dipped a small curtsy and went to the door. "I will bring broth," she said, and went out. The door closed. The room was very quiet. The fire snapped. The Duke stood at the foot of the bed, with his hands folded behind his back. He was studying her the way a man studies a map before a journey. "You should not be alone with me," Nora said. "Mrs. Ashby will return in a moment. She has left the door unlatched. I asked her to." "Oh, I did not want you to wake and find yourself alone in a strange house." Nora did not know what to do with that either. She turned her face a little on the pillow. "The children," she said. They are truly well. The older girl, Meg, was here yesterday with her father. He came to thank you. He was sober. It was, I understand, a rare state for him. Perhaps it will last, perhaps not. But he came. And the little one? Prudence, 4 years old. She has asked to see the lady who carried her out of the water. When you are strong enough, I will bring her. Nora nodded. She could not speak. He came around the side of the bed. He stopped a proper distance away. He looked down at her, and for a long moment he did not speak. She watched his face. It was not a handsome face, not in the way handsome was drawn in the little books the girls in the village passed to each other. His nose had been broken once. There was a thin white scar through one eyebrow, but his mouth was steady, and his eyes did not move away from hers. "You ran onto the ice," he said. His voice was low. "You had no rope, you had no coat, you had no plan. You went out onto ice you must have known would break. I knew it might break. You went anyway. They were children." He was quiet a moment. Then he said, "Yes, the fire popped. A piece of wood shifted. I could not have reached them in time," he said. "I would have been slower with the horse. By the time I dismounted and came down the bank, you were already on the ice. I saw you crawling. I have been in war, miss." He stopped. He did not know her name. This struck her, for some reason, as very strange. "Whitfield," she said. "Nora Whitfield. Miss Whitfield." He inclined his head. "I have been in war. I have seen brave men move. I have not seen anything like what you did." Her eyes filled again. She was ashamed of it. She turned her face. "Do not," he said quietly. "Do not turn away. You have nothing to be ashamed of. You have the opposite of anything to be ashamed of. Rest. I will not stay. Mrs. Ashby will come. When you are stronger, I will have questions for you. I would like to ask them properly. Questions? About your life, about how you have lived so far, about what you would like next. Your Grace, Alistair, that is not a thing I can, not in company. But in this room, when the door is shut and only Mrs. Ashby is present, you may. I ask it as a favour. I am not accustomed to being called Your Grace by someone who nearly died to save 3 children on my land." She could not look at him. She stared at the pattern of leaves on the ceiling. He waited a moment more, and then he bowed, once, briefly, and went out. The door closed. Nora lay still. Her breath came uneven. Somewhere in the house, faintly, she could hear his voice, giving an order. And then footsteps going away. She slept. Over the next 3 days she grew stronger. Mrs. Ashby brought her broth and bread. She brought her tea that was black and hot, and better than any tea Nora had drunk in her life. She brought her books from a library somewhere in the house, and Nora read them by the fire in the afternoons, wrapped in a shawl that was not hers. Her aunt came each day, in a carriage the Duke sent for her, and sat by the bed and held her hand and cried and laughed and cried again. "He is not what they say," her aunt whispered on the second afternoon. "He is not cold. He is quiet. That is different." "How would you know, aunt?" "You have spoken with him?" He came to the cottage himself, to tell me you would live. He stood in our kitchen. In our kitchen, Nora, he drank a cup of my thin tea and did not complain. Nora smiled a little. She could not imagine it. The tall, grave man in her aunt's small kitchen, ducking under the low beam. On the fourth day she was strong enough to walk. Mrs. Ashby brought her a dress. It was not one of her own. It was grey wool, plain, but the wool was fine and the cut was good. It was made for you, Mrs. Ashby said. His Grace sent the measurements down to the seamstress. Do not fuss. It is only cloth. But you cannot go about the house in a nightdress, child, she dressed. She stood at the tall window and looked out. Ravenshallow spread below her, gardens white with snow, hedges dark against them, a long drive that curved down toward the lake. The lake was frozen still. It looked very small from up here. There was a knock. Mrs. Ashby opened the door. Miss Prudence, Your Grace, she said. The Duke came in with the little girl on his arm. Prudence was in a red dress. Her cheeks were pink. She had a doll clutched under her chin. When she saw Nora, her eyes got very round. You, she said. Me, Nora said. The Duke set the child down. Prudence walked across the room and put her small hand on Nora's knee. She looked up. Her eyes were the same brown as her hair. You carried me, she said. I did. You were cold. I was. His Grace was cold too. He was. Prudence considered this. She turned and looked at the Duke, who was standing near the door with his hands behind his back. Then she turned back to Nora. You are not to do it again, she said. Nora bit her lip so she would not laugh. I will try not to. Prudence nodded, satisfied. She held up her doll. This is Betsy. She is very brave. She looks very brave. You may hold her if you wish. Nora took the doll. It was a rag doll with a stitched face and yarn hair. She held it a moment and gave it back. Prudence tucked it under her chin again. Papa says thank you, she said. He said to say it to your face. Then please tell him he is welcome. To his face. Prudence nodded again. She walked back to the Duke, and he lifted her up, and she went out on his arm the way she had come in. But at the door she turned and called back over his shoulder, Bring her a scone, Alistair. She is very thin. The Duke's mouth twitched. It was not a smile, quite, but it was close. Yes, madam, he said, and carried her out. Mrs. Ashby laughed under her breath. She has taken you for her own. She calls him Alistair? She does. He allowed it the first day. Nobody has corrected her since. Nora looked at the door where they had gone. Something in her chest turned over softly. That evening a scone came up on a tray, warm, with butter and jam. She was strong enough on the 6th day to come down for dinner. Mrs. Ashby had a maid help her into a proper gown, dark blue this time, and pinned her hair up. She looked at herself in the long glass and did not know the woman looking back. She was pale, but there was colour in her cheeks. Her eyes seemed larger than they had been. She did not look like a woman who lived in a cottage with a chipped teacup. She was frightened. Do not be frightened, Mrs. Ashby said, catching her eye in the glass. You have faced worse than a dining table. Nora laughed, a small, startled laugh. I have. She went down. The dining room at Ravenshallow was long. The table could have sat 20. There were only 2 places set, one at the head and one at the corner beside it. The Duke rose when she came in. A footman held her chair. She sat. You look well, the Duke said. I feel well. Good, they ate. The soup was hot and thick. Nora had never eaten soup with so much taste. There was bread with a hard crust and a soft inside, and butter so pale it was almost white. And a small dish of pickled beets. She ate slowly, careful of her manners, which she had learned from her mother a long time ago and had rarely used since. The Duke watched her, not rudely, just with attention. He seemed to be a man who gave a thing all his attention or none. Miss Whitfield, he said after the soup had been taken away. May I ask you questions now? She set down her spoon. Yes, Your Grace. Alistair, Alistair, she said, and felt her face grow warm. Tell me about your aunt's cottage. She told him. She told him about the roof that leaked in the north corner, and the well that ran slow in summer, and the 2 goats they kept, and the small garden. She told him her aunt had taken her in when she was 13, after her father's death. She did not talk about her mother. He did not press. "You have no other family?" he asked. "None who claim us." He noted this. He asked her about the village. He asked her what she read. She was surprised, he asked. She told him. She had read every book in her aunt's small shelf, and every book at the vicar's, and every book the schoolmistress had loaned her when she was still young enough to attend the little school by the church. She had read the same books many times. "And what did you want before?" he asked. "Before you gave up wanting?" She looked at him sharply. He met her eyes. "I did not say I gave up wanting. I saw you at the window that first day. Before the children, you had the look of a woman who has made peace with too small a life." She did not know how to answer. She looked down at her plate. The silver spoon caught the candlelight and threw a small line of gold along the tablecloth. "I wanted to travel," she said at last. "Once I wanted to see the sea. I have never seen the sea. You have not?" "No, Ravenshallow is 30 miles from the sea." "I know. I have never had a reason to go." He said nothing to this. He only nodded. Once. The footman came in and took away the plates and brought others. Nora ate. She could not taste it quite. She could feel him watching her, and it was not unpleasant, but it was not comfortable either. It was something in between. After dinner he walked her to the foot of the great staircase. He did not offer his arm, and she was glad, because she did not know if she would have taken it. He stopped at the bottom step. "Good night, Miss Whitfield." "Good night, Alistair." She went up the stairs alone. She did not sleep for a long time that night. She sat by the window in her nightdress with the shawl around her shoulders and watched the moon come up over the trees. The snow was blue in the moonlight. Somewhere out in the park, an owl called. Somewhere inside the house, a door closed very softly. She thought of her aunt in the cottage. She thought of the goats. She thought of the small chipped teacup on the sill. She did not know what she was doing here. In the morning a letter came for the Duke. She knew because she was in the library, curled in a chair by the window with a book she had not opened. And she saw the footman go past with the silver salver. A little while later she heard the front door open and close and a carriage come round. "Mrs. Ashby came into the library. Miss Whitfield, Lady Marsden is here." "Who?" Mrs. Ashby's face did not move. "His Grace's cousin. She lives at the manor across the valley. She has come to call." Nora rose. She smoothed her dress. Her hair, which she had done herself that morning, had come loose in one place. She pushed it back. "Should I?" she began. "You should stay. She has asked to meet you." "To meet me?" "News travels, Miss Whitfield. Everyone in 3 counties has heard about the ice." Nora sat down slowly. Lady Marsden came in on a wave of perfume. It was a heavy, sweet perfume, like rotting flowers under sugar. She was a tall woman, thin, elegant. She wore black silk, though no one Nora knew of was dead. Her hair was very dark and very smooth, pinned close to her head. Her mouth was small and painted red. "So you are the heroine," she said. She did not smile. "How brave. How simply brave." "Lady Marsden," the Duke said. He had come in behind her. He did not sound pleased. "Alistair, dear, do not scowl. I have come to congratulate your little rescuer. May I sit?" "Of course I may." She sat. She arranged her skirt. She looked Nora up and down with pale eyes. "You are quite pretty," she said, in a rustic sort of way. "Do you know I have been quite worried about my cousin. He has been shut up here alone all winter, brooding on his sorrows. To learn that his solitude has been broken by a village girl who fell into a lake, well, one had to come at once. One had to see." "I did not fall in, madam," Nora said quietly. "The children fell in. I went in after them." Yes, of course, the children. Terrible business. Their father drinks, does he not? Such a pity. But then, one cannot save everyone. One would exhaust oneself in the trying." The Duke had not sat. He stood by the fire, one hand on the mantel. His jaw was tight. "Marguerite," he said. "Enough, enough. I have only just begun." "Miss Whitfield, is it?" "Whitfield, I did not know there were Whitfields in these parts." Your father was a blacksmith, Nora said. She did not look away from those pale eyes. In Alderton. He died when I was 13. A blacksmith. Lady Marsden let the words sit in the air. How charming. And your mother, also dead. How tragic. And now here you are, in my cousin's drawing room, in a gown that is clearly not your own. Tell me, Miss Whitfield. She leaned forward a little, her red mouth curved into what was not quite a smile. Do you truly think, in all your simple country wisdom, that a man like my cousin could ever forget what you are? A blacksmith's daughter is a blacksmith's daughter, no matter whose water she has swum in. He is grateful. Gratitude is not affection. Gratitude wears off, and when it does, you will find yourself back in your cottage with nothing but the memory of a good gown and a warm fire, and the rest of us will be very sorry for you indeed. The room went silent. Nora heard her own heart. She heard the fire. Quiet now, as if it too had stopped to listen. She heard, very far away, a bird outside the window. She did not stand up. She did not raise her voice. She looked at Lady Marsden across the small distance between their chairs, and she said, very evenly, I did not come here for the gown, madam. I came because I could not walk. I will go home the moment I can. I have not asked for anything, and I do not intend to. But if you have come to warn me away from something I have not reached for, you have wasted your morning. She stood. She curtsied, briefly, to Lady Marsden, who was looking at her with her mouth slightly open. Your Grace, she said, without looking at him. She could not have borne to look at him. I find I am tired. I will go up. She walked out. She did not hurry. Her steps were even. She reached the door and closed it behind her softly, and then she walked up the stairs, one hand on the banister, her back straight. She did not cry. She did not shake. It was only when she reached her room and closed her own door that she sat down on the edge of the bed and put her face in her hands. She did not weep. She only breathed. In and out. In and out. She would go home tomorrow. She was still sitting on the edge of the bed when a knock came. It was Mrs. Ashby. She had a tray. Tea, Mrs. Ashby said. Come now. Up you get. Not on the bed. In the chair by the fire. Mrs. Ashby. In the chair, child. Nora went to the chair. Mrs. Ashby set the tray down. She poured the tea. She handed the cup over. Then she stood a moment, looking at Nora, and her round face was soft. Lady Marsden, she said, is a woman who was disappointed in her youth and never got over it. She had hopes for herself and hopes for her daughter, and neither came to anything. She takes it out on the world. Do not carry her words with you. She was not wrong, though. She was entirely wrong. Nora shook her head. I am a blacksmith's daughter, Mrs. Ashby. That is not a lie. His father was a farmer's grandson, 3 generations back. A dukedom is a piece of paper. What a person is what they do. And you, Miss Whitfield, are a person who crawled onto breaking ice to hold a child out of the water. That is what you are. Drink your tea. Nora drank her tea. She looked at the fire. He will come up in a moment, Mrs. Ashby said. He is furious. I have not seen him this angry in a year. He is trying to be calm before he speaks with you. Do not be afraid. He is not angry with you. Mrs. Ashby went out. He came a quarter of an hour later. He knocked. She said, come in. He came in and closed the door and stood in the middle of the room with his hands hanging at his sides. And she saw that Mrs. Ashby had been right. He was angry, but not at her, never at her. Miss Whitfield, he said. His voice was low and tight. I owe you an apology. You do not. I do. She is my cousin. I invited her once, 10 years ago, to consider herself always welcome here. I did not know what she would become. I have not corrected her since. That is my fault, and today it was you who paid for it. I paid nothing. You paid your dignity, in my drawing room. That is not nothing. She looked up at him. He was very still. There was a muscle working in his jaw. I will speak with her, he said. I will speak with her tonight. She will not come here again. That is not the point. The point is, you should not have been treated so, and you were, and I was in the room, and I did not stop it in time. You said, Marguerite, enough, too late. You said it, not soon enough. She was quiet a moment. She looked at her hands in her lap. "Alistair," she said, and it was easier to say the second time. "Will you sit down? You are making my neck sore." He sat, in the chair opposite hers. He put his elbows on his knees. He looked into the fire. "I would like to say something to you," he said, "that I have not said. But I want to wait until you are home, until you are strong, until you have had time to think without the walls of my house around you. I do not want to be Lady Marsden's warning come true. You are not that. I would not be. You are not." He looked at her. His iron-grey eyes were softer in the firelight. They were not so iron. "Rest tonight," he said. "Tomorrow, if you wish, I will drive you home myself. And in a week, when you have thought, if you will receive me at your aunt's cottage, I will come. To ask questions? To ask one question. Only one. I do not know what my answer will be. I would not want you to know yet." He stood. He came to her chair. He looked down at her. And then he did something she did not expect. He took her hand, briefly, and turned it palm up, and he laid his own gloveless hand over her palm-warm skin on cold skin, only for the length of a breath. Then he let her go and stepped back. "Good night, Nora Whitfield." "Good night, Alistair." He went out. She sat by the fire a long time. He drove her home the next morning, as he had promised. He drove himself, in a small open carriage, with a heavy fur rug over her lap and a hot brick at her feet. The road wound down through the park and out along the lane. The lake sat below them, white and quiet. The place where the ice had broken had frozen over again, dark and rough, like a scar. Neither of them spoke of it. They spoke, when they spoke at all, of small things. He asked her which turning to take at the crossroads. She told him. He asked her whether her aunt would need firewood in the coming week. She said her aunt would not accept firewood. He said he would send some anyway, in his own name, without saying it was for her. She was quiet a long moment at that. "That is my private business," he said, glancing at her. "Not yours to accept or refuse. She may argue with me if she likes. She will lose." "She will lose," Nora agreed. They came to the cottage. Her aunt was at the door before he had helped her down. Her aunt had washed the front step. Her aunt was wearing her Sunday cap. He handed Nora down. He inclined his head to her aunt. He did not come in. He said, "Ma'am, your niece is home safe. I will call in a week. With your permission, if she will see me." Her aunt looked at Nora. Nora nodded. "You will be welcome, Your Grace," her aunt said. He climbed back up, took the reins, touched his hat, and drove away. Nora and her aunt watched the carriage until it disappeared around the bend of the lane. Then her aunt said, "Softly come inside, child, before you catch your death." She went inside. The kitchen was the same. The teacup was still on the sill. The mending was still on the chair. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. The week was long. She did the same things she had always done. She swept. She baked. She carried water. She fed the goats. She went to the well. She went to the churchyard on Sunday and sat in the back pew as she always had, and she did not miss how the eyes of the village found her, then slid away. She did not know what they were saying. She could guess. On the third day of the week, the vicar's wife came to the door with a basket of apples. "For you," she said, "from the vicarage. We are so glad you are well." Nora took the apples. She did not know what to say. The vicar's wife had not brought apples in her life. On the fourth day, the schoolmistress came with a book she had been saving to loan. On the fifth day, Meg Ashcombe came with her father. Her father was thin and grey and shaking a little, but his eyes were clear. He held his hat in his hands. "Miss Whitfield," he said. His voice broke. He steadied it. "I have not had a drink in 10 days. I do not know how long I can hold, but I wanted you to know it is because of you. Meg has told me every day what you did. Prudence tells the story to anyone who will listen. And I—" He stopped. His mouth worked. He shook his head. "I have 3 children. I did not know it until last week. Thank you." She could not speak either. She took his hand between both of hers and squeezed. Meg was watching her with round eyes. "You may come here whenever you wish, Nora said at last. All of you. This door is open to you always. They went. That evening her aunt said, You have changed the village. Do you know that? I have not changed it. I only pulled 2 little girls and a little boy out of a lake. You have changed it. You will see. On the 6th day, in the afternoon, Nora walked down the lane toward the village to buy salt. She passed the smithy, which had been her father's once, and was now another man's. She passed the little school. She passed the churchyard, and at the churchyard gate, she stopped. There was a woman kneeling by one of the graves. It was Mrs. Ashcombe's grave, the mother of the children. Someone had cleared the snow from the stone. Someone had laid a small bundle of dried holly and pine and rosemary at the foot of it. The bundle was tied with a strip of dark green wool. Nora stood at the gate a long moment. Then she walked home. Her aunt was making bread when she came in. Aunt, she said, did you go to the churchyard today? No, dear. Did the vicar's wife? Not that I know. Did anyone from the village put flowers on the Ashcombe grave? Her aunt turned. She had flour on her cheek. Not that I have heard. Why? There is a bundle of holly and pine there, tied with green wool. Her aunt looked at her a long moment. Then she smiled, a small, tired smile, and turned back to her bread. Green wool, her aunt said. The same green as his coat, I would guess. Nora sat down. He rode past the churchyard on the way here that first day, her aunt said. He knew whose children they were. He must have gone back. He did not tell me. He would not. Nora sat with her hands in her lap. She thought of the tall, silent man kneeling in the snow at the grave of a woman he had never met, laying down holly and pine and rosemary, because her children were alive. She thought of him doing it in the cold, alone, without telling anyone. She thought of him tying the bundle with a bit of wool from his own coat, because it was what he had. Her aunt put a cup of tea in front of her. The tea was thin and bitter. Nora drank it. It tasted better than any tea she had ever had. The 7th day came. It was a bright, cold morning. The snow was fresh from the night before. The sky was pale blue. Nora dressed carefully. She wore her plain grey dress, her own grey dress, not the one from Ravenshallow. She braided her hair simply. She sat by the window with a book in her lap that she did not read. Her aunt sat by the fire, mending a stocking. She hummed softly under her breath. She had not hummed in a long time. At noon they heard the horse. Nora rose. She smoothed her skirt. Her aunt looked up. Go on to the door, child. Will you not come? I will make myself scarce, thank you very much. I will be in the garden. He can find me if he has business with me, which he does not. Nora went to the door. She opened it before he had dismounted. He looked up at her. He had ridden a different horse today, a chestnut. He wore the same dark green coat. His hair had blown in the wind. There was colour in his face. Miss Whitfield, he said. Alistair, he tied the horse to the post at the corner of the yard. He came up the path. He stopped at the step. May I come in? You may. He came in. He had to duck under the beam, as her aunt had described. The kitchen was very small. He stood in the middle of it, and did not seem to fit. The teacup was still on the sill. He looked at it. He looked at the mending in her aunt's chair, though her aunt was not in it. He looked at the low fire. He turned to Nora. May I say what I came to say? Yes. He put his hat down on the table. He put his gloves on top of the hat. He did all this slowly, as if to give his hands something to do. Then he looked at her, and his iron-grey eyes were steady, and he spoke. I have thought about you every day since you came out of the water. Not, at first, in the way I am about to say. At first I thought about you as one thinks about a soldier one has seen do something one did not know a person could do. With respect. With a kind of awe. Then, at the house, over that week, I began to think about you as one thinks about a person one wants to know. I asked you questions because I wanted your answers. I brought Prudence to your room because I wanted to see your face when she said thank you. I sat across from you at dinner because I wanted to watch you eat pickled beets, which I have never in my life enjoyed watching anyone eat before. She laughed. She did not mean to. It came out of her. He did not laugh, but the corner of his mouth turned up. Then Marguerite came, he said. And I saw a thing I had not expected to see. I saw you stand your ground with a woman who has trained her whole life to make women like you kneel. You did not raise your voice. You did not shake. You stood up, and you left. And when you had gone, I found that I did not want to be in the room anymore either. I did not want to be in any room she was in. I only wanted to be in the room you had gone to. He took a breath. I am not a young man, he said. I am 34. I have been married once. She died 6 years ago. I have not looked at anyone since. I did not intend to look at anyone again. I came to Ravenshallow this winter to be alone. I did not want a wife. I did not want a companion. I wanted a fire and a book and quiet. And now I want you at the fire with the book. I want you at the table. I want you at Ravenshallow, not as a guest, but as its mistress. I want you as my wife. The room went very still. She heard the fire. She heard, faintly, her aunt moving in the garden. She heard her own breath. Alistair, she said. Her voice was not steady. She stopped. She began again. You know what I am. You know where I come from. You know the village will talk. You know your cousin will not be the last woman to say what she said to me. There will be 100 Marguerites. There will. And you will hear them talk about me. About us. For the rest of your life. I do not care what they say. I have never cared what they say. I care what you say. Only that. She looked at him. She looked at the tall grave man standing in her kitchen, with his hat on her table and his gloves on his hat. She thought of the ice. She thought of the child in her arms. She thought of the holly and the pine at the grave in the snow. She thought of the pale green room and the plaster leaves and the scone that had come warm on a tray. She thought of the sea, which she had never seen. I will say this, she said, and her voice was steady now. I did not want a duke. I still do not want a duke. But I would like, very much, to know the man who put holly on a grave in the snow. I would like to know him for the rest of my life. He closed his eyes. Only for a moment. When he opened them, they were very bright. You know about the holly, he said. Yes, who told you? No one told me. I saw it. My aunt guessed the rest. He nodded slowly. He did not speak for a moment. Then he said, That was for the children, not for you. I did not do it to be seen. I know. That is why I want to know you. He crossed the small kitchen in 2 steps. He did not touch her. He stopped a foot away. May I, he said. He stopped. He was not a man who often ran out of words. He looked, for the first time since she had met him, uncertain. You may, she said. He took her hand. He turned it, as he had done in the bedroom at Ravenshallow, palm up. He laid his hand on hers, warm skin on skin. Then he lifted her hand and pressed it briefly to his mouth. It was not a kiss the way the books drew kisses. It was quieter than that. It was a promise. He set her hand down and stepped back. I will speak to your aunt, he said, in the garden. If she will have me, she will have you. She has already decided. His mouth turned up at the corner again. That is a relief. He went out. Through the window, Nora saw him walk down the path to where her aunt was pretending to prune a bush that had already been pruned. He stopped a proper distance away. He took off his hat. He said something. Her aunt straightened up. She looked at him. She looked at the kitchen window where Nora was standing. She looked back at him. She said something. He inclined his head. Then her aunt did something Nora had not seen her do in 10 years. Her aunt laughed. Not a small, careful laugh, a real, warm, surprised laugh that carried across the yard and through the glass. They were married in the spring, in the small stone church at the edge of the village, because Nora would not be married at the great church in the town. The vicar cried. The vicar's wife brought apples. Meg Ashcombe was there with her father, who had gone 112 days without a drink and was still counting. Prudence was there with her doll. She had insisted the doll be present as a witness. The Duke had bought the doll her own small chair for the ceremony. Lady Marsden was not there. She had received a letter, brief and civil, informing her that her invitation to Ravenshallow was withdrawn. Mrs. Ashby wept quietly through the whole ceremony, and would not admit afterward that she had wept at all. That summer, when the roads were dry and the days were long, The Duke of Ravenshallow drove his wife 30 miles east in an open carriage, and they came, in the late afternoon, over a low green hill, and the sea was there. It stretched from one edge of the world to the other, grey and gold and moving. Nora had never seen anything so large. She stood in the carriage without speaking. The wind smelled of salt. The gulls called. Somewhere, far out, a small white sail moved slowly along the horizon. She turned to him. Her eyes were wet. She could not speak. "I know," he said quietly. "I know." That night they walked along the shore with their shoes in their hands. The sand was cold under her feet. The stars were very bright. He held her hand. He did not let it go. A year passed. Then 2. The great house at Ravenshallow filled with small sounds, a child's laugh from the nursery, the clatter of a wooden horse being pulled across the hall, Mrs. Ashby's steady footsteps, the Duke's low voice reading in the library at evening. Nora's aunt came often, and sometimes stayed for weeks, and had her own room on the south side, where the sun was best. The 3 Ashcombe children grew and thrived. Their father drank once more, in the 2nd year, and stopped again, and stayed stopped, and lived to see Meg married from Ravensshallow's own great door. On a winter afternoon, 3 years after the ice, Nora walked down through the park with a heavy cloak around her shoulders and a small warm bundle in her arms. The bundle was her daughter. The child was 3 months old. She had her father's iron-grey eyes and her mother's dark honey hair. Her name was Grace. The Duke walked beside her. His hand was at the small of her back. They walked slowly. The snow was fresh. Their breath went up together in small white clouds. They came to the lake. The ice was thick and white. In the middle of it, 3 children were skating in bright red scarves. Meg was tall now, almost a young woman. The boy was long-legged and quick. Prudence, 7 years old, skated in wide, slow circles with her hands in the air. She saw them at the shore and waved. Nora waved back. Grace stirred against her chest and made a small sleeping sound. The Duke stood beside her, looking out over the ice. "Do you remember," he said quietly, "the first time I saw you? You were on a horse. In the lane. I had come down that morning to look at the lake. I had heard the ice was thin. I meant to send men down with rope. I was late by 10 minutes. If I had been on time, no child would have fallen in, and I would never have seen you run across that field." She looked at him. "I have thought about that often," he said. "How close I was to never knowing you. You would have known me. Somehow, I do not believe that. I believe I would have gone back to my library, and my fire, and my book, and I would have died alone. And I would not have known what I had missed." She reached up. She put her free hand against his cheek. His skin was cold. His eyes were not. "Then thank God," she said, "for the 10 minutes. He turned his face and pressed his mouth to the inside of her wrist, just once, briefly, the way he had done in her aunt's kitchen. Then he took her hand in his and held it against his chest. They stood a long time at the edge of the lake, watching the children skate, and the sun sank low, and the sky turned pink and gold above the trees. Somewhere in the branches an early owl called. Somewhere behind them, from the direction of the great house, a bell rang softly for the evening meal. The ice had cracked once, long ago, and everything they were had come out of that breaking.